Well, hello everyone and welcome. Good evening to you and welcome to this live telephone town hall meeting. We can see we already have some folks who are joining us on the line right now. Thank you all so much for being here early. We will get started in just a few moments, so please stay on the line as we continue connecting to more and more of your neighbors in the 33rd District of California. So again, hello everyone and welcome. We are inviting you to join Congressman Ted Lieu for this very special live telephone town hall meeting. Now this call is an opportunity for residents to ask questions, share concerns, and hear updates on the latest from Congress. Now with that being said, if you have any questions, please press 0 on the keypad on your phone. Again, pressing 0 on your phone keypad to ask a question tonight. Now, for those of you who are just joining us on the line, we want to say hello to you, good evening, and welcome. We are inviting you and your neighbors in California's 33rd Congressional District to join Congressman Ted Lieu in just a moment for this live telephone town hall meeting. And while we wait for more to join us, I'll go through this introduction one more time. Throughout this call, we hope that you ask Congressman Lieu a question regarding issues that are most important to you. You can ask at any time by pressing 0 on your phone keypad. An operator will gather a clear summary of what you'd like to ask the congressman and submit that for you. Now, if you'd like me to read your question over the air, no worries. Just let your operator know that that is what you would prefer, and I would be more than happy to do so. Of course, we would rather hear your voice, but either way, press 0 right now or at any time to get those lined up for Q&A. Another option for you tonight is to press 7 at any time as well if you'd like to provide us with your email address. In doing so, we will be sure to keep you updated electronically moving forward by linking you to the representative's e-newsletter. So that's 0 to get in line with your question tonight and 7 to register for future email updates. Now, to get more information after the call tonight, or if you'd like to sign up for Lieu's newsletter on your own time, you can visit lieu.house.gov. That's lieu.house.gov. Now, without further ado, I'd like to officially get this call started off by turning it right over to Congressman Ted Lieu. Sir, please take it away.
Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone for participating in this live telephone town hall. I'm going to give an update on what's happening in Washington, D.C., and then I'm going to have my district director, Nico Rodriguez, talk about some of the things we can help you with in our district office, and then I look forward to answering any questions you may have. So we are in 2-year legislative cycles, and we're about to end our second year, and we have had a productive Congress, perhaps one of the most productive in recent history. As you recall, before January 1st of 2020, we were in the middle of a pandemic. We had lots of folks who didn't have jobs. We had folks who had to wait in long lines sometimes to get food at food banks, and we had a lot of things that were not going well. And then these past 2 years, we saw our economy start to recover. So we passed the American Rescue Plan that really jump-started the economy. It helped schools open and remain open. It got funding to local cities and states, and a significant amount of that funding went to first responders, such as police departments and fire departments. And we also had the child tax credit that helped cut child poverty in half. And then we followed that up with a bipartisan infrastructure law to rebuild roads, bridges, and highways, to put internet broadband everywhere, from rural areas to inner cities to suburbs and everywhere in between, and also to take lead out of water pipes. And then we followed that with the CHIPS and Science Act, to bring back high-performance chip manufacturing to the United States. That is not only going to help our economy, but also help our national security. And then we passed something called the PACT Act that is going to help veterans nationwide get the compensation they deserve from being exposed to toxic substances. And then we passed the Inflation Reduction Act. That is the greatest investment in climate change projects in world history. It also pays down our federal debt, and it really creates a lot of pathways for additional future environmental investments. And right now, we're working on an end-of-year omnibus package to fund government. Very pleased that we have basically the contours of a deal. We'll be finalizing that in the next few days, and we'll vote on it next week. As a result of all the things Congress has done, we have had the highest job creation in recent memory. In the first 15 months of the Biden administration, over 8.3 million jobs were created. That is a record high. And then recently we have surpassed the 10 million jobs mark. In addition, the recent report on inflation shows that it is slowing down. We also have seen a decline in gas prices. And I do believe that our best days are still ahead. And so I'm very excited about the upcoming 2-year legislative cycle, which starts in January, and very honored to be your representative. And I now want to turn it over to my district director, Nico, who's going to talk to you a little bit about all the things a district office can do that could assist you and your family.
Thanks, Congressman. Good evening, everyone. I'm Nico Rodriguez. I'm Congressman Lieu's district director. So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes just to give you all an overview of some of the services we offer. As you're all aware, Congressman Lieu has 2 district offices, a primary district office in West LA, which most of us are based out of, and a by-appointment office that we use in the South Bay and Manhattan Beach. And staff members for the congressman in his district office do a lot of the external outreach that we will do on a day-to-day basis to cities, school districts, local colleges, nonprofits, but most importantly to constituents themselves, all the way up from Malibu and Agora Hills, all the way down to the Palos Verdes Peninsula and San Pedro and Harbor City. And we'll do that outreach. We will work directly with constituents on any issue that they might have as it relates to a federal benefit or a federal policy matter. That includes things like working with students who want to apply for military service academies, to attend them and become cadets, or provide assistance to nonprofit organizations that may need some assistance or potentially are applying for a grant, a federal grant or a state grant. And so folks will reach out to us. We'll provide them, if they're a nonprofit or a government, a letter of support at times if they're applying for a federal or state grant. And we'll do a lot of that external outreach that people understand is a lot of the work that a congressional district office does. But actually, the big bulk of what we do as a congressional district office, like other offices throughout the country, is to provide direct constituent services to assist people who are having challenges or problems with a federal agency. So, what is casework? If a person reaches out to us, say perhaps they have an issue with a federal benefit like their Social Security retirement benefits or their veteran benefits from a service-connected claim, or they may have they're waiting a visa potentially to come to the country or bring someone to the country, or perhaps they're contacting us because they're having an issue with their postal delivery. They will contact our office and speak with one of our caseworkers or anyone in our office. I've been a caseworker myself in the past, and we will talk with them, try to identify what the issue is. And this is the basic process that we do with them when they come to us with an issue. If you live in the congressman's district and you identify the issue, we will get to you what's called a privacy release form. It's basically a form that we are required to get by law in order to get your written permission to submit an inquiry to a federal agency on your behalf. We talk with the folks, get them this form. They'll fill it out with all of their pertinent information regarding themselves, their contact information, and identify the problem. We get that form back. We meet each day and review all of our casework, assign it to a caseworker who will then immediately send out an inquiry to a federal agency. And then what we basically do is act as, in essence, advocates and also a communicator, a facilitator between the constituent who has a problem with a benefit and the agency that they're experiencing a problem with. And we basically work with them until we can get a resolution on that matter. Most of the time we do get a positive resolution. Sometimes it's not always the case. All of that is really dependent on the agency's decision, but we have a really good success rate working on those cases. So if you need a passport, if you haven't gotten your tax return, if you're waiting for a VA benefit, if you've got some postal delivery issues, you can contact our office and speak with one of us, and we will take you through that process. And that gives you an idea of things. For, an example, we've handled, over 1,000 cases, each year. And I know we may get into more details regarding that, where we will open up over 1,000 cases each year. And just this past year alone, we closed around 1,700, almost 1,800 cases in a given year, which is a really large amount for a congressional district office. And we work to try to get you those benefits, try to address any issue you might have with Social Security or, any agency you have, or work on your mail delivery and try to get that resolved as much as possible. So that gives you an idea of the constituent service you have. If you have a question, you're not sure if our office is the best office, don't hesitate to give us a call. If we can help you out, we will start that process. If we find that this is maybe a state or local matter, we're happy to get you connected either with your state, county, or local city official if it's that level of government to try to get that issue resolved. We work with all of our counterparts in the state legislature, the county supervisorial offices, and each of our cities to address those issues. So that gives you a sense of everything. And before I end, I just want to give you one plug. This always comes up, particularly during holiday season, but a really timely one is a lot of folks like to travel during the holiday season. If you're visiting folks or visiting family members or potentially going abroad, potentially for a vacation, you buy a flight and then you go to check your passport, and your passport is either expired or it's going to expire within 3 months. Most countries abroad only allow people to come into their country if they have a valid passport that is well beyond 6 months from expiring. So my advice to you all is, if you are planning on traveling, look at your passport before, and you're planning on traveling abroad, look at your passport, make sure that there's plenty of time still on it. Look at the country's requirements before you travel, and the travel.state.gov website, which is the State Department's website, and just make sure that you are within time. And if you have any questions, you can contact us. If you need a passport in a very short period of time because you have emergency travel or you booked a flight and your passport was already expired, we can try to secure you what they call a special handling appointment at the LA Passport Office at the West LA Federal Building. But because this is peak season, we can't necessarily guarantee we can get you that appointment in a timely fashion when there are a large volume of demand for those types of passports. So make sure to contact us, check your passport, renew it when you get the chance. I always do it at least about a year before it expires. And then we're always here to help if you have any passport issues, like every other federal policy issue. And I will end it right there. Thanks, Congressman.
Thank you so much, Nico. And we look forward to answering any questions you may have. And I'll be happy to really give my best shot at answering your question. I would not try to dodge your questions at all.
Yeah, well, with that, Congressman, let's go ahead and dive right in. But before we do, I just want to let folks know that if you joined us a little bit late on the line, we are inviting you and thousands of others in the 33rd District of California to join Congressman Ted Lieu for this live telephone town hall meeting. Now, we are up to our Q&A, so if you do have a question, please go ahead and press 0. Already see a lot of great questions coming in already. You can also press 7 to receive important information moving forward via email. So this allows you to join the Reps e-newsletter. So again, that's pressing 0 to submit a question and 7 for email updates. So first up tonight, we're going to hear from Michael in Torrance. Michael, you are live on the line with us. Please go ahead with your question.
Hello, Congressman Lieu. First, I'd like to thank you for your service in both the military and Congress. I'm very concerned that so many congressmen who were involved in the January 6th coup attempt are about to take power in the House, including several on the Oversight Committee, which is very disturbing. I just want to know, in your opinion, what can be done to keep our government from falling into chaos with this occurring?
Thank you so much, Michael, for your question. The midterm election results did actually show that the vast majority of American people rejected election deniers, rejected insurrectionists. If you look at, for example, every Secretary of State candidate that was an election denier and that was backed by Donald Trump, they all lost their elections. So I think the American people did, in fact, send a pretty strong signal in the midterms. And just as a factual matter, the U.S. Senate actually expanded by one seat, which is almost unheard of in a midterm for the party that controls the White House. So we do have some election deniers and people who supported insurrection who were in the House of Representatives. And what we do know is the Department of Justice is doing investigations, and people who were in the insurrection, who attacked Capitol, many of them have been indicted, have gone to prison or jail, and the investigations are ongoing. So we'll see if that leads up to any members of Congress. And my view is no one is above the law, whether you're a former president or a member of Congress. So we'll have law enforcement do their work that they need to do, and prosecutors look at the evidence. And then in the House of Representatives, it really is the people that are our bosses, and we answer to our constituents. And hopefully the people of America will again rise up and show the people who participated in insurrection or supported it that they are wrong, that they're on the wrong side of history. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we focus on things that people actually care about, the kitchen table issues of safer communities, better paying jobs, and lower costs. What we see from Republicans, unfortunately, is their focus right now on Hunter Biden's laptop. And I don't see how that helps the American family move forward. So we'll see what happens in the next 2 years. But my hope is we'll be able to work together on a bipartisan basis on issues to help move the American economy forward.
Well, thank you so much, Congressman, and thank you, Michael, for our first question. Let's go ahead next to Ariane in LA. And so sorry if I mispronounced your name. Ariane, you are live. Go ahead.
You actually pronounced it right the first time. Thank you so much. That never happens. And thank you, Congressman, for the town halls. And I am a big fan of yours. I'm so appreciative for all that you do. And I just wanted to ask about what you're doing right now, or what's being done to legalize abortion nationwide. It feels like that's not enough of the forefront of conversations these days. And as a woman in America, I'm pretty terrified these days. So just want to make sure you're working for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. So we had a number of states, such as California and Michigan, put in actual laws in the states into the Constitution of the state to protect a woman's right to choose. At the federal level, the House has passed legislation that would put Roe v. Wade back as a law of the land. Unfortunately, it has not passed the U.S. Senate because of filibuster. So we actually needed 52 Democratic U.S. senators to break the filibuster. We will have 51 next year, so we're getting closer. But my view of politics is everything seems impossible until it happens. So I think we just have to keep pushing and fighting for a woman's right to choose. And just conceptually on this issue, I'm just giving you my personal view, which is what we know is that in the first 12 hours after fertilization, the zygote remains a single cell. Now, is that a human being? I don't know, but I do know this. Politicians should not be making that decision. They're incredibly personal decision that has enormous ramifications of whether to continue or terminate a pregnancy should be made by the pregnant woman. And so that is my view, and that is a view of the overwhelming majority of Americans. And that also showed itself this midterm, where their pro-choice issue was clearly on the minds of many Americans. And that's one reason the Democrats way overperformed this midterm. So we just have to keep fighting to protect a woman's right to choose. And in the House, we're going to keep doing everything we can to stop MAGA Republicans from trying to turn a clock back 50 years. And we'll continue to push to protect the woman's right to choose.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and get our next question up here. I'm going to go ahead and read this one. It looks like this one's coming in from Cynthia in Santa Monica. She's asking, what is the government doing about increasing anti-Semitism? Will you please pressure your colleagues to pass legislation to minimize the issue?
Thank you so much for that question. I am one of the co-chairs of the bipartisan task force in Congress to combat anti-Semitism. This is as the caller noted, a issue that unfortunately has been increasing in America. We've seen a rise in hate crimes, particularly against the Jewish community as well as the Asian American community. And so we've done a number of hearings on the House Judiciary Committee, of which I sit, on hate crimes. And we do know that white nationalism is one of the reasons for this spike in anti-Semitism and in hate crimes. And so we in the House Judiciary Committee have been doing oversight of the FBI, and the FBI, to their credit, is on it. They are devoting significant resources to combat white nationalism. They do view white nationalism as the greatest domestic terror threat, and they are doing everything they can to try to mitigate this issue. I think we also, in our own capacities, need to speak out whenever we see anti-Semitism. When we see elected officials engage in it, we need to call that out. When we see individuals engage in it, we need to call that out. It is a very difficult issue that is not only something that is occurring this year, but it's been occurring for thousands of years. And so we need to push back on this every chance we get. In terms of legislation, I have introduced legislation to make it easier for federal prosecutors to charge hate crimes violations, which would include any crimes that are anti-Semitic. And it is something that we just need to continue to highlight whenever it happens and to fight back against it and to make sure that we can mitigate this very troubling issue.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Cynthia, for joining us here. And it looks like we have another question coming in from Robert in South Torrance, and he's asking me to just read his question as well. Robert's saying, we really appreciate you. Thank you for what you do. What will you do now that majority in the House has changed, and how are we going to move forward?
Thank you, Robert, for that question. It is true that in January, Republicans will gain control of the House. It is a very small majority that they will have, essentially 5 seats. And so our hope is that Republicans will learn the lessons from this midterm where they dramatically underperformed and work with Democrats on issues such as lowering costs, safer communities, and better paying jobs, and to put people over politics. Unfortunately, just based on what I've been reading in media, it looks like they're focused on issues that majority of Americans don't care about, again, such as Hunter Biden's laptop. In fact, it's even more irrelevant than that. It's actually what Twitter was saying about Hunter Biden's laptop. I don't see how that helps American families. And so hopefully there'll be reasonable Republicans that will work with Democrats on making sure that we can continue to move our economy forward. So we'll see what happens in the next 2 years. And my hope is that we can get things done on a bipartisan basis.
All right. Thank you so much. And really appreciate that question, Robert. Now, before we get to our next question here from Sarah. I want to go ahead and run our first survey question of the night. So go ahead and get your phone keypads out and ready to vote here. The congressman wants to know which part of the House's agenda these past 2 years has been most important to you. So by using your phone keypad, go ahead and vote. You can press 1 for lowering costs for American families, pressing 2 for creating better paying jobs, or press 3 for creating safer communities. So once again here, let me go ahead and read through these options to make sure everyone has a chance to weigh in. Again, which part of the House's agenda these past 2 years has been most important to you? Pressing 1 for lowering costs for American families, press 2 for creating better paying jobs, or press 3 for creating safer communities. Now, thanks everyone so much for weighing in here. Let's go ahead and get to our next question, if we can, from Miss Sarah in Torrance. Sarah, you are now live on the line with us. Welcome. Please go ahead.
Hi. Thank you, Congressman, for all that you do for our nation and your direct constituents. I just wanted to say that your empathy and efforts are not lost. And with that, my question is in regards to the Marriage Equality Act, and that I'd love some clarification since it's been promoted as a landmark legislation, and my understanding of it is a little different in that if the Supreme Court overturns the Obergefell decision, we're not going to be that much better off than we were pre-2015. The only difference will be that marriage will be protected at a federal level. And I kind of fear for what might happen, what that might cause when things go back to states' decisions. It's still, of course, with federal protections. But am I misinterpreting this correct or incorrectly? I hope that I am.
So thank you, Sarah, for that question. First of all, it was a piece of legislation that we had to work with Republicans on, right? Because we did need 60 votes in the Senate for it to pass. So it does provide additional protections, not only for LGBTQ marriage equality, but also for interracial marriages. The Supreme Court could sort of mess it up, but I think it would be hard for the Supreme Court to do that, partly because this legislation, the way it's written, will essentially sort of require states to honor the marriages of any other state that has marriage equality. And so there is that protection there. But I think there is sort of debate on exactly what the Supreme Court could do to weaken marriage equality. My sense is because of what Congress did, I don't think the Supreme Court is going to go there. That's one reason we also did that, was to send a message to the Supreme Court. But you are right. I think there is legitimate debate on what could the Supreme Court do to weaken marriage equality. So we'll see what happens in the future. But my sense is the Supreme Court likely won't go there. That is my gut sense of what's going to happen.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Sarah, for joining us here tonight. And before we get our next question up here, I want to remind folks that if you have not done so already, go ahead and press 7 to provide an operator with your email address to receive updates moving forward from the Congressman's office. So again, this is one of the best ways to stay current, and I can see your neighbors have been taking advantage of this option so far tonight. So again, go ahead and press 7 right now to sign up for the Reps e-newsletter. Don't miss out here. You can also sign up on your own time if you prefer by visiting lieu.house.gov. And I do want to go ahead and just share the results here of our first survey question. And remember, I did ask which part of the House's agenda these past 2 years has been most important to you. And Congressman, it looks like we had 44% of our listening audience today vote for creating safer communities. Following that was 36% for lowering costs for American families. And then finally, 19% said creating better paying jobs. Now, what are your thoughts on those results?
Sorry, I was muted. So first of all, these results are very helpful to me to sort of see what the constituents are thinking. And I'm going to take these results and go over with my team and see how we can reprioritize for next year. But we have 2 more additional poll questions, so I do hope that people continue to participate. And one thing about lowering costs is it does take some time. So some of the laws we passed, right, to help with supply chain issues and to make sure that we can get our economy back on track did take some time to implement. But you're starting to see that now. You're starting to see supply chains be much better than they were right after the pandemic. And what we do know is after, for example, the last flu pandemic last century, there was also a short-term spike in inflation. And basically what happens is because all their major economies of the major countries shut down, when they restart up again, there was just this big bottleneck and you have all these supply chain issues. And because of that, you have high demand and not enough supply, and inflation goes up. It's just a simple supply and demand curve. But now as supply starts to go up and catches up with demand, then you start to see costs start to decrease. And that's basically what this last report showed. So I'm very pleased with the poll question, and we will continue to work on all these issues next year.
All right, great to hear. Thanks so much. And let's move right along here with questions if we can. Up next here, I see Bruce in Redondo Beach. Bruce, you are live with us right now. Please go ahead with your question.
Yes, my question is this. Why are we not being much more forceful in presenting the Democrats' case for the economy? All I hear is, we got inflation. And when I talk to people, when they talk about that, I said, yes, we have inflation. It's an issue. We're working on it. But what about the fact that almost everybody is working? Now, this was brought up earlier when they were doing the recap before the questions came, and there were a number of economic points that were put up that were very good. My point is this. I don't hear those. I don't hear it as a PR. Okay, I hear the Republicans all the time. I don't hear the Democrats strongly, and I think that's a mistake.
So thank you very much for your question. So there's 2 things going on. So you're correct that you don't hear that a lot. That's different from whether Democrats are saying that. So if you were, for example, to read of most Democrats, I think you'd be pretty pleased at what we're saying. Now, the problem is that's not the way it's communicated, because there's something in between what we say in our press releases and what you see, and that is the media, right? So it's the media that picks and chooses what they're going to cover, put on TV, put on the radio, put in print. And what the media essentially is, at a very basic level, is most of them are for-profit corporations, so they have to generate a profit. And what causes people to buy newspapers, watch TV ads, and so on, is conflict, right? So you're not going to see a lot of stories that talk about, this great bill passed with bipartisan support in both houses, signed by President, help some Americans here. For the same reason you don't read stories about planes that land. It doesn't sell newspapers. It doesn't sell TV ads. But what sells TV ads and newspapers are stories about conflict. And so it's much easier to show conflict when you have Republicans saying all sorts of stuff, even though, in my opinion, much of that is not true. But at least that causes a conflict, causes a story to happen, and then they can run that story. The actual truth, as you noted, is that inflation is a worldwide phenomenon. Many major industrial countries actually have higher inflation than the U.S. Certainly the United States was not immune from these inflationary worldwide pressures. And so what we saw was, in fact, a spike in inflation, and also dependent on product. So lumber was actually one of the first products to have a major spike in prices. It shot up really high. It also was one of the first products to come back down. And if you look at lumber prices now, they're essentially lower or about the same as pre-pandemic levels. And so you'll see that with different products, but it's just very clear most of inflation was caused by the pandemic and countries coming right out of it and restarting the economies and people having high demand and not enough supply. So lots of us were saying that. It's just that the newspapers and TV folks and radio folks wanted to show conflict and have Republicans say, oh, no, it's Joe Biden's fault or somehow the Democrats' fault, because they believe that those kinds of stories will get more people to watch TV and buy newspaper ads. But in reality, what happened in terms of inflation was mostly because of the pandemic.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Bruce, for joining us here as well. Now we're going to go ahead and get another question up here from Amelia in LA, who asked me to read her question. Looks like she has a couple of questions here for you, Congressman. The first one is, do you have any control over the homeless situation in Southern California? And then Amelia's second question is goes like this: is anyone doing anything to create more efficient voting system that is easier to use?
So thank you, Amelia, for those two questions. I'll address the homelessness question first. Homelessness is one of my top priorities to help reduce homelessness. In terms of whether the federal government has much control over this, the actual answer is we don't. It is mostly handled at the state and local levels. However, there is a segment of the homeless population over which the federal government does have different jurisdiction, and that is veterans who are homeless. And in terms of veterans who are homeless, the federal government has a number of very good programs to address that. We have something called the HUD-VASH voucher that provides both housing as well as services to veterans who are homeless. So as a result, when you look at the data, even though there was a huge spike among the homeless population in California, there was not that corresponding spike among veterans who are homeless because of these various programs. And the West LAVA, currently in my district, it is one of the world's largest hospitals, and it provides a certain amount of services to veterans. I was very pleased that one of the first laws I had passed as a member of Congress when I served during the Obama administration years was a bill that President Obama signed that resulted in a whole new master plan for the West LAVA, and it is going to have its full build out over 1,200 units to house veterans who are homeless. And then in this upcoming year, we're going to see a number of buildings start to break ground and also get renovated to start housing veterans who are homeless. I recently just got another law passed in the National Defense Authorization Act. It was a provision that Senator Feinstein and I worked on that helped the West LAVA get money from the easements that they had. And so that money is also going to go back to the West LAVA to help veterans who are homeless. Now, my view is just because the federal government only has jurisdiction over this small slice of the homeless population doesn't mean that that's the way it needs to be. So Senator Feinstein and I have introduced legislation that would apply to the entire homeless population, where we would provide essentially billions of dollars to state and local government to provide services to people who are homeless funded by the federal government. Unfortunately, we have not been able to get that into law because of Republican opposition, but we're going to keep trying. And it is my hope that with Mayor Bass as a new mayor of LA. She is, by the way, one of my close friends. I served with her on her leadership team when she was Speaker of the California Assembly. I've known her for many years. It was an honor for me to serve with Karen Bass in Congress. And now I'm thrilled that she's mayor of LA, and she has made reducing homelessness her top priority. And I look forward to working with her to reduce homelessness as well. On the second question, actually, you're going to have to remind me what the second question is.
Yeah, absolutely. Her second question was, is anyone doing anything to create a more efficient voting system that's easier to use?
Oh, that's a great question. So there are a few things going on. You have a number of Republican-controlled legislatures that have been going the other way and making it more difficult to vote by eliminating drop boxes, by restricting mail-in voting, by restricting early voting. Something I find absolutely hilarious, by the way, is Carrie Lake, who lost her race for governor in Arizona, recently complained about the long voting lines. Well, guess what? If she didn't support reducing all these measures to make voting easier, if she didn't support all these laws in Arizona that made voting harder, well, you wouldn't have those long voting lines in Arizona. And so hopefully she's learned her lesson that restricting voting is not the way to go. We don't want very long voting lines. We want to have drop boxes, mail-in voting, early voting. We want to make it easier for people to vote, not harder. So I fully support not having laws to suppress the vote. I fully support what we do in California, which is essentially we have mail-in voting. We mail actually the ballots to registered voters as well. We also have drop boxes. We have a lot of ways to make voting easier in California. And if every state did that, we'd have more people voting, which is healthy and good for a democracy. In terms of making voting more efficient, I do think mail-in voting is one way to do that because you can actually have a ballot in your home. You can, take your time to read the ballot, to research things if you so want to, or read the ballot guide, and then you can fill out the ballot and basically put it in your mailbox, and the person will pick that. The postal service person will pick that up and bring it to the post office, or you can put it in a drop box. There are so many easy ways to get your ballot in, and I think that's a pretty efficient way of doing it. I vote by mail myself. So hopefully we can get other jurisdictions in other states to do that more.
Well, thanks so much, Congressman, for tackling both these questions here. And before we get to our next question from David, let's go ahead and run another survey question. What issue do you think Congress should prioritize next year? So again, getting your phone keypad out to vote, you can press 1 for protecting women's health and access to abortion, press 2 for taking action on climate change, or press 3 for protecting Social Security and Medicare. So once again here, what issue do you think Congress should prioritize next year? Pressing 1 for protecting women's health and access to abortion, press 2 for taking action on climate change, or press 3 for protecting Social Security and Medicare. Again, everyone, thanks so much for voting here. Let's go ahead and take another question if we can. I see next up we have David in Santa Monica. David, thank you so much for joining us. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman. I'm looking forward to the next Congress controlled by the Republicans and very concerned about the MAGA Republicans voting to impeach the president. I'm wondering what, if anything, you can do about that. At best, it seems to me it's a gigantic waste of your time. But at worst, it's PR for the right wing. So what are you going to do?
Thank you for your question. I sit in a House Judiciary Committee, and if there were an impeachment proceeding, that's the committee to which the impeachment proceeding will go through. I think we have to push back and fight back against any attempt to impeach President Biden. I have not yet seen any legitimate reason why they would even do that, right? Under President Biden, we have had the highest job creation in U.S. history in the first 15 months of his presidency. He was able to take a country that was pretty down because of the pandemic and get the economy back up and running. He did something that Donald Trump was never able to do, which was to get a major infrastructure package into law. And under President Biden's leadership, we now have the greatest investment in climate change projects in U.S. history. We have passed a law to bring back high-performance chip manufacturing to the United States. So it is not clear to me at all on what basis they would impeach President Biden. So doesn't mean they won't try, because you do have a lot of MAGA Republicans that are in an alternate universe where, again, they think the most important issue facing Americans is what Twitter was saying about Hunter Biden's laptop. So hopefully that's not going to be what they do next year, but we shall see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, David, for joining us, and thank you, Congressman. With that, we have officially reached our allotted time tonight, and before I do turn it back over to you, sir, I want to quickly thank everyone in our listening audience for joining us tonight. We did answer as many of your questions as we had time for. However, if your question was not answered, we do encourage you to stay on the line until the very end of this call to leave us a voicemail message. Now, when leaving those voicemails, we do ask that you please leave us your name and your best contact information so that we have a fighting chance of reaching back out to you. And with that, I want to go ahead and wrap this up by turning it back over to you, Congressman, to bring us to the finish line.
Thank you. Before I give my close, do we want to read back the poll results of the second poll?
Oh, absolutely. Let's go ahead and do that, Congressman. So, yes, we did ask what issue do you think Congress should prioritize next year? It looks like we had 55% vote for protecting Social Security and Medicare, and then following that, 28% for taking action on climate change, and finally 16% for protecting women's health and access to abortion.
Thank you so much. That is very helpful. I do want to note, I think another reason that just as a factual matter, Democrats expanded the Senate to 51 senators is because if you look at the Republican plan under Senator Rick Scott, it would have eliminated Social Security and Medicare in 5 years. And how do we know that? Because he put it in writing. And so hopefully the Republicans have learned their lesson from the midterms and they won't pursue legislation to basically weaken or overturn Social Security or Medicare. I'm going to fight as hard as I can to try to prevent that from happening. And thank goodness we have President Biden in the White House who I'm sure will veto any attempts to try to weaken Social Security or Medicare. My view is we need to strengthen Social Security. I support Congressman John Larson's Social Security 2100 legislation that would not only strengthen Social Security but also increase benefits to Social Security recipients. And then in close, I just want to say how honored I am to represent the congressional district and of all the tremendous work we've been able to do in the last 2 years. I know our best days are still ahead, and I look forward to continuing serving the constituents of the district, and I want to wish every one of you a very happy holidays. And with that, please have a good evening. Bye-bye.